In a small, quiet part of Denver, 34-year-old accountant Sarah Michelle Chen was about to uncover a truth that would upend her family's beliefs. Known for her sharp eye and refusal to take things at face value, she had built a career finding hidden discrepancies. During their father's funeral, her brother Michael cruelly called her the mistake child, sparking her decision to take a DNA test. The results revealed shocking secrets that unraveled 3 generations of lies, reshaping the Chen family's identity and forever altering Sarah's understanding of who she was. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Elena Reyes had built her life on the foundation of meticulous planning. Her downtown San Antonio office reflected this philosophy. Color-coordinated binders lined pristine shelves, and vision boards mapped out marketing campaigns with surgical precision. Today, those organizational skills focused on something far more personal: her wedding. Late afternoon sun streamed through corner windows, casting golden light across scattered bridal magazines and vendor contracts, covering her glass desk. Elena's fingers moved efficiently across her laptop, updating the final timeline for her dream day. 6 months of planning had led to this moment, every detail locked in place, every vendor confirmed. Her phone rang at 4:47 p.m. "Elena Reyes?" she answered, not looking up from adjusting ceremony start times. "Miss Reyes, this is Maria Gonzalez from Hacienda de los Santos Event Coordination." The woman's voice carried an odd hesitation that made Elena's fingers pause. "I'm calling to confirm your wedding booking for September 15th. Elena's heart skipped. "Confirm? I thought we were set. Is there a problem?" A long pause. Too long. Elena's marketing instincts began sending alarm signals through her nervous system. "There's been a situation. Another booking was made for that same date. The reservation was placed Monday." The words hit like ice water. "That's impossible. I've had that date reserved since January. We have a signed contract." "Yes, ma'am, and I apologize. However, the other party also has a signed contract, dated 3 days ago. They've paid the full deposit, and—" "Who?" Elena's voice sharpened. "Who made the booking?" Another pause. "Carmen Reyes." The name hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. Elena stared at her computer screen, watching the cursor blink mindlessly, seeing nothing. Her sister's name echoed in her mind, each repetition building pressure behind her temples. "Carmen Reyes," Elena repeated slowly. "Yes, ma'am. She mentioned being your sister? She seemed to think there wouldn't be any conflict since your family." Elena's hand tightened until her knuckles went white. 16 again, watching Carmen effortlessly charm their parents into letting her borrow Elena's car for prom. 22, watching Carmen get the internship Elena had applied for first. 25, listening to their mother gush about Carmen's engagement while barely acknowledging Elena's marketing award. "Miss Reyes, are you still there?" "I'm here." Elena's voice went flat, professional. "What are my options?" "Perhaps if you spoke with your sister." Elena ended the call. For 30 seconds, she sat motionless, staring at the vision board on the opposite wall. The hacienda featured prominently photos from family gatherings, magazine clippings, even a watercolor painting she'd commissioned. The vision board had been her secret for years, representing dreams she'd harbored since age 12. Carmen had seen those boards countless times, every holiday gathering, every apartment visit. Carmen had even complimented Elena's planning skills.
And then she'd stolen it? Elena's fingers dialed before conscious thought caught up. "Hola, Elena," Carmen's voice bubbled with characteristic enthusiasm. "What's up, hermana?" "The hacienda, Carmen." The enthusiasm dimmed. "Oh, that? Elena's voice climbed. "You booked our family venue for my wedding day and call it that? Let me explain." "Explain what? How you've known my date for 6 months? How you've seen my planning boards hundreds of times?" I didn't know you'd already booked it. Carmen's voice turned defensive. I called Mom about using the hacienda, and she said it would be fine. She never mentioned your reservation. Because you didn't ask about my specific date. You just assumed. Elena, Marcus and I just got engaged. We want to marry quickly before his work gets crazy. 6 months, Carmen. I've been planning this for 6 months. See if the dates are printed. Maybe we can work something out. Share the weekend? Elena closed her eyes. The casual dismissal, the same tone Carmen used when borrowing Elena's things as children, assuming Elena would accommodate whatever Carmen wanted, sent familiar rage coursing through her veins. Share the weekend? Yeah, it could be fun. A wedding weekend celebration for the whole family. My wedding isn't a group activity, Carmen. You're being dramatic. It's just one day. We can figure this out like adults. Just one day. Elena stared at the vision board, years of careful planning reduced to just one day in her sister's mind. The golden child strikes again, expecting the world to rearrange itself around her impulsive decisions. Give me the venue, Carmen. What? Cancel your booking. Choose a different date. I can't do that. We've already told people. Marcus's family is flying in from Seattle. I don't care about Marcus's family. That's not fair. Fair? Elena's voice rose. You want to talk about fair? Nothing about our entire relationship has ever been fair. Silence told Elena she'd hit her mark. 28 years of accumulated resentment crystallized into this perfect example of everything wrong between them. Elena? Carmen's voice went small. I didn't mean for this to happen.
But it did happen. Just like everything else. Elena ended the call and sat in growing darkness, watching city lights twinkle beyond her windows. Her phone buzzed with texts, Carmen trying to continue the conversation, their mother asking her to call, David wondering about dinner. She ignored them all. Instead, Elena pulled up her laptop and began typing with campaign precision. This wasn't about marketing anymore. This was research. Intelligence gathering, strategic planning. Carmen had chosen Mariposa Wedding Planning. Elena pulled up their website, business registration, financial filings. Public information, but Elena knew how to read between the lines, how to spot vulnerabilities. Sofia Martinez, owner and founder, 15 years in business, struggling with pandemic debt based on delayed payments in public records. A business owner who might be open to opportunities. Elena's fingers paused as possibility unfolded in her mind. Carmen thought she could take whatever she wanted, whenever she wanted it. Her parents would probably back Carmen's decision, as always. The family favorite would get her fairy tale wedding, and Elena would be expected to smile and accommodate. But Carmen had miscalculated. She'd stolen from someone who knew how to fight back. Elena reached for her phone, calling business contacts, investment advisors, her lawyer, the same network she'd built during her marketing rise, now repurposed for an entirely different campaign. As sunlight faded from her office windows, Elena felt something cold and sharp settle in her chest. The hurt remained, raw and bleeding, but it was being wrapped in something harder, something that felt dangerously like purpose. Carmen wanted to play games with Elena's dreams. Elena was going to teach her sister what real competition looked like. Marcus's hand had barely settled on Carmen's shoulder when Elena ended their call, but the echo of her sister's small, defeated voice lingered in the darkened office. The city lights beyond her windows seemed sharper now, more focused, as if the world itself had shifted into a different resolution. Elena's first call was to Jonathan Reeves, her former colleague who'd transitioned from marketing to investment banking 2 years ago. He answered on the second ring, his voice carrying the tired satisfaction of someone who'd just closed a major deal. Elena Reyes, didn't expect to hear from you tonight. Jonathan, I need information on a local business, Mariposa Wedding Planning, specifically their financial health and any potential acquisition opportunities. A pause. That's oddly specific. Personal interest? You could say that. Elena's fingers were already pulling up Mariposa's website, studying Sofia Martinez's professional headshots. The woman looked tired in recent photos, the kind of exhaustion that came from sleepless nights spent balancing books that refused to balance. Give me 24 hours. I'll run a full analysis. 12 hours, Elena corrected. And Jonathan, Discretion is paramount. The next 3 hours passed in a blur of research and strategizing. Elena's marketing background had taught her to identify pressure points, to understand what motivated people to make decisions they might otherwise avoid. By midnight, she had Sofia Martinez's professional biography memorized, her business model analyzed, and her vulnerabilities cataloged like items on a shopping list. Mariposa had been Sophia's everything after her divorce. 15 years of building a reputation on creating perfect weddings for other people while her own marriage crumbled. The pandemic had devastated the wedding industry, and while larger companies had resources to weather the storm, boutique planners like Sophia had been left scrambling. Elena found traces of the struggle in delayed vendor payments, reduced staff, and the telling absence of any major events listed on their social media for 6 months during 2021. But Sophia was proud. Her website still projected success, her testimonials glowed with satisfied clients, and her portfolio showcased events that rivaled those of companies 3 times her size. Pride was something Elena understood intimately, and something she could weaponize. At 8 a.m. sharp, Elena called Mariposa's office. "Good morning. This is Sofia Martinez."
Martinez, this is Elena Reyes. I'm recently engaged and looking for a wedding planner. I've heard wonderful things about your work. Sophia's voice warmed immediately. Congratulations! I'd love to discuss your vision. When were you thinking of scheduling your celebration? Actually, I'm quite flexible on timing. I'm more interested in finding the right planner who understands my particular needs. Elena's tone suggested complexity, the kind of high-maintenance client who brought both challenges and premium fees. Would you have time to meet today? I know it's short notice, but I'm very decisive once I find what I'm looking for. They arranged to meet at 2 p.m. at Mariposa's offices in the historic Pearl District. Elena spent the morning crafting her persona. Successful businesswoman with specific tastes and unlimited budget, but someone who valued discretion and personal attention above flashy displays. Sophia's office occupied the second floor of a converted warehouse, all exposed brick and carefully curated vintage touches. Sophia herself was exactly what Elena had expected. Mid-40s, impeccably dressed despite the obvious strain around her eyes, and radiating the kind of controlled warmth that came from years of managing difficult clients. "Please, have a seat. Can I offer you coffee? Water?" Coffee would be perfect. Elena settled into a velvet armchair, her trained eye cataloging details. Fresh flowers on the desk, but not expensive ones. Designer furniture, but most pieces showed subtle signs of wear. The office of someone maintaining appearances while cutting costs wherever possible. As Sophia prepared coffee from an elegant but clearly well-used machine, Elena began her reconnaissance. "I have to ask, you must be incredibly busy this season. September weddings are so popular." "Oh yes, we're quite booked." Sophia's smile flickered almost imperceptibly. "Actually, I just took on a wonderful client, Carmen Reyes. Do you know her? She has quite the social media following." Elena's expression remained perfectly neutral. "The name sounds familiar. September wedding?" "September 15th, at the Hacienda de los Santos. It's going to be absolutely stunning." Sophia's enthusiasm was genuine, but Elena caught the subtle relief underneath. A high-profile client meant exposure, potential referrals, financial breathing room. "How lovely! I'm sure we'll be featured everywhere." Elena accepted her coffee, noting Sophia's slight hand tremor. Stress, exhaustion, or caffeine? Possibly all 3. "That must be quite an undertaking, especially with your obvious attention to detail." They spent the next hour discussing Elena's fictional wedding needs, with Elena skillfully steering the conversation toward Mariposa's capabilities, resources, and current client load. Sophia was professional, but increasingly relaxed, clearly relieved to have a potential client who appreciated quality over quantity. As their meeting concluded, Elena made her move. "Sophia, I have to say, I'm impressed by your approach, but I have to ask, and please forgive the directness. Are you planning to expand? I ask because I have some experience in business development, and I see tremendous potential in what you've built here." Sophia's careful composure slipped slightly. Expand? Growth capital, strategic partnerships, the kind of resources that could take Mariposa from boutique to industry leader without losing what makes it special. Elena leaned forward slightly, her voice carrying the practiced sincerity of a seasoned negotiator. I've seen businesses like yours transform overnight with the right investment. That's an interesting perspective. Elena stood, extending her hand.
Think about it. I'll be in touch about my wedding, of course, but I'd also love to discuss other possibilities. Sometimes the best opportunities come from unexpected directions. Walking back to her car, Elena felt something she hadn't experienced since yesterday's phone call: control. The meeting had confirmed everything her research suggested. Sophia was talented, disparate, and proud enough to resist obvious charity, but smart enough to recognize a genuine opportunity. By evening, Jonathan had delivered his financial analysis, confirming Elena's assessment. Mariposa was profitable, but leveraged, innovative, but undercapitalized. Most importantly, it was exactly the kind of acquisition target that could be positioned as a rescue rather than a takeover. Elena's phone buzzed with a text from David. "How are you feeling? Want to talk about yesterday?" She stared at the message for a long moment before typing back, "Much better. Everything is going to work out perfectly." It wasn't entirely a lie. Everything was going to work out, just not the way anyone expected. That night, Elena began assembling her team, starting with Mia Rodriguez, a recent MBA graduate who'd been persistent in seeking mentorship opportunities. Ambitious, intelligent, and hungry for the kind of experience that Elena was about to provide. Carmen thought she could simply take what she wanted. Elena was about to teach her sister the difference between wanting something and earning it. 3 days later, Elena stood in Sofia Martinez's office, watching the older woman's hands shake slightly as she signed the acquisition papers. The deal had moved with remarkable speed, 48 hours from initial offer to final signatures. Sofia's relief was palpable, though she tried to mask it with professional dignity. "I want you to know," Sophia said, setting down her pen, "that I've never made a decision this quickly before. But something about your vision, it feels right." Elena's smile was perfectly calibrated, warm enough to be reassuring, confident enough to inspire trust. Sometimes the best opportunities require bold action. You built something beautiful here, Sophia. Now we're going to make it unstoppable. The transition was seamless by design. Elena had structured the acquisition as an expansion rather than a takeover, keeping Sophia as creative director while Elena assumed the role of managing partner. To outside observers, Mariposa had simply gained an investor and strategic partner. Only Elena knew she'd just purchased the perfect weapon. Her first official act was reviewing the client files, with Carmen's folder receiving special attention. Elena spread the documents across Sophia's, now her desk, like a general studying battlefield maps. Carmen's timeline, vendor contracts, guest list, every intimate detail of her sister's dream wedding laid bare for Elena's examination. "The Reyes wedding is quite special," Sophia said, appearing in the doorway with fresh coffee. "Carmen has such a clear vision, very specific about her aesthetic." "I'm sure she does." Elena's tone remained neutral as she studied Carmen's photography preferences. Romantic, soft focus. Predictable. "Has she been easy to work with?" "Oh, yes, though she's quite enthusiastic about details. She calls frequently with updates and new ideas." Sophia's diplomatic phrasing spoke volumes about Carmen's management style. Elena made a mental note. Carmen's enthusiasm was just another word for her need to control every element, except this time, Elena controlled the controller. "I'd like to take point on this particular client," Elena said casually. "Given the high-profile nature of her social media presence, it seems like an excellent opportunity to showcase our capabilities." "Of course, though we should mention we have a planning session scheduled for tomorrow afternoon. Carmen wanted to review the final vendor selections." perfect. Elena spent the evening preparing for her first face-to-face encounter with Carmen since their devastating phone call. She rehearsed her professional demeanor in the mirror, practicing the exact balance of confidence and warmth that would keep Carmen off balance. Tomorrow's meeting would set the tone for everything that followed. At precisely 2 p.m., Carmen swept into Mariposa's offices in a cloud of designer perfume and nervous energy.
She looked radiant, engagement glow mixing with the golden tan that came from careful attention to her social media image. But Elena noticed the tension around her sister's eyes. The way her laugh came half a beat too late when Sophia made polite conversation. "Carmen, I'd like you to meet Elena Reyes, our new managing partner," Sophia said, her voice carrying genuine enthusiasm for the introduction. The moment stretched like a wire-pulled taut. Carmen's face cycled through confusion, recognition, and something approaching panic before settling on forced brightness. "Elena, what are you... what a surprise!" "Hello, Carmen." Elena's voice was perfectly professional, as if they were strangers meeting for the first time. "Congratulations on your engagement. Sophia has told me wonderful things about your vision." You work here now?" "I'm a partner, yes. I specialize in high-profile events." Elena gestured toward the conference table. "Shall we review your timeline?" Carmen sat slowly, her eyes never leaving Elena's face. "This is so strange, such a coincidence. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us." Now back to the story. "San Antonio's wedding industry is smaller than you'd think," Elena replied smoothly, opening Carmen's file with the casual efficiency of someone reviewing any client portfolio. "Now, I see you've selected artisan blooms for your florals. Excellent choice, though I wonder if we might consider some alternatives." "Alternatives?" Carmen's voice carried a new sharpness. "I thought everything was finalized." "Oh, it is, but part of our service includes ongoing optimization. For instance, I've discovered that Artisan Blooms has been having some supply chain issues lately. Nothing major, but for an event of this caliber?" Elena let the implication hang in the air. Sophia frowned slightly. "I hadn't heard about any issues with Artisan Blooms." "It's very recent," Elena said with the practiced confidence of someone stating verifiable facts. "Industry contacts. But let's not worry about that now. Carmen, tell me about your photography priorities." For the next hour, Elena systematically questioned every vendor choice, every timeline decision, every carefully planned detail of Carmen's wedding. She framed each inquiry as professional due diligence. But Carmen grew increasingly agitated as Elena found potential issues with nearly every selection. "I don't understand," Carmen finally said, her composure cracking. "Last week, everything was perfect. Now suddenly there are problems with everyone." "Wedding planning is an evolving process," Elena replied calmly. "My job is to anticipate challenges before they become crises. Better to address concerns now than face disasters later." Carmen's phone buzzed, a text from Marcus asking how the meeting was going. Carmen glanced at the message, then back at Elena, something like recognition flickering in her eyes. "Elena, can I speak with you privately for a moment?" "Of course." Elena followed her sister into the hallway, noting how Carmen's designer heels clicked against the hardwood floor with increasing tempo, a tell Elena remembered from childhood arguments. "What are you doing?" Carmen's whisper was sharp with accusation. "Working," Elena replied simply. "This is a business, Carmen."
"I saw an opportunity and took it. This is about the hacienda, isn't it?" Elena's expression remained perfectly neutral. "This is about wedding planning. Your wedding planning, specifically, which, as your new coordinator, I'm committed to making absolutely perfect." The way Elena emphasized perfect sent a visible shiver through Carmen. Her sister had always been able to read Elena's moods, and right now, something in Elena's controlled composure was setting off every alarm bell Carmen possessed. I think maybe we should use a different planner, Carmen said quietly. That's certainly your prerogative, Elena agreed, though you'll forfeit your deposit, and finding someone else with availability for September 15th might be challenging, especially someone with our reputation and vendor relationships. Carmen stared at her sister, understanding dawning in her eyes like sunrise revealing a battlefield. Elena was no longer the accommodating older sister who cleaned up Carmen's messes and accepted second place. This Elena was something else entirely, professional, calculating, and completely in control. Sophia mentioned you call frequently with updates. I look forward to maintaining that level of communication. After all, your wedding is going to be absolutely unforgettable. Carmen's face went pale, but before she could respond, Marcus appeared in the reception area, checking his watch. Hey, babe, how did the meeting go? His warm smile faltered as he took in Carmen's expression. Everything okay? Marcus, this is my sister, Elena. She's our new wedding planner. Marcus's confusion was immediate and obvious. Wait, your sister? The one you had the fight about with... The venue, Elena finished smoothly, extending her hand. Marcus, so nice to finally meet you. Carmen's told me so much about you. As Marcus processed this information, Elena felt the satisfying click of pieces falling into place. She was no longer on the outside, looking in at Carmen's perfect life. She was inside now, with access to every detail, every vulnerability, every pressure point. Carmen thought she could steal Elena's dreams and face no consequences. But Elena was about to show her sister that some thefts came with a very high price. The first strike came 48 hours later, delivered with surgical precision and perfect timing. Elena sat in her new office, reviewing vendor contracts, when she placed the call to Carmen's chosen photographer. James, this is Elena Reyes from Mariposa Wedding Planning. I'm calling about the Carmen Reyes wedding on September 15th. Oh yes, fantastic client. Everything still on track? Actually, that's why I'm calling. We've discovered a scheduling conflict with the venue that might require moving the ceremony time by several hours. I know this is last minute, but would you have flexibility to adjust your timeline? A pause while James checked his calendar. September 15th. Oh no. If you move the ceremony, that puts you right into the Martinez anniversary celebration. I'm shooting that evening. I thought Carmen's event was locked in for the afternoon. Elena let concern creep into her voice. The venue coordinator just informed us of the conflict this morning. Some issue with the neighboring property's construction schedule. We're trying to work around it, but...
I'm sorry, but if the timing changes, I'll have to withdraw from the booking. The Martinez event has been scheduled for months, and they're some of my best clients. Of course, I understand completely. These things happen. I'll let Carmen know immediately. Elena ended the call and immediately dialed Carmen's number, letting it ring once before hanging up. Then she composed a carefully worded email about the developing situation with the photographer, expressing deep regret and offering several alternative photographers, all of whom were either significantly more expensive or notably less skilled than Carmen's original choice. The second strike required more finesse. Elena had Mia Rodriguez, her new assistant, place a call to Rosa Martinez at Artisan Blooms. Hi, Rosa. This is Mia from Mariposa Wedding Planning. I'm calling about our vendor accounts. We've been reviewing our partnerships and wanted to discuss payment terms. Of course. What can I help you with? Well, we've had some clients express concerns about delivery reliability lately. Nothing specific to your work, but with wedding seasons getting so busy, we want to make sure all our vendors can guarantee their commitments. Elena listened from her office as Mia spoolfully planted seeds of doubt about volume capacity and delivery schedules, suggesting that perhaps Artisan Blooms might want to reconsider taking on additional large events during peak season. Actually, Rosa's voice carried new uncertainty. Now that you mention it, September is going to be incredibly tight for us. The Carmen Reyes wedding is quite elaborate. Maybe we should discuss scaling back the scope or finding a more suitable timeline? By lunch, Elena had orchestrated 3 separate vendor complications for Carmen's wedding. Each incident was perfectly plausible, each concern legitimate enough to justify vendor withdrawal or scope changes. Most importantly, each problem could be traced to external factors rather than Elena's influence.
Carmen's first panicked call came at 2:17 p.m. Elena, I just got a call from my photographer. He says there's some issue with the venue timing. Yes, I was just about to call you. Elena's voice carried exactly the right blend of professional concern and personal sympathy. The Hacienda coordinator contacted us this morning about a municipal construction project that's going to affect parking and noise levels during your originally planned ceremony time. We're working on solutions, but it may require some adjustments. What kind of adjustments? Well, we could move the ceremony earlier in the day, but that affects your photographer's availability. Or we could work with the construction schedule, but that might mean some ambient noise during your vows. Elena listened to Carmen's breathing quicken on the other end. This is insane! Everything was perfect last week. These things happen in event planning. That's why you hired professionals to handle the complications. Elena's tone was reassuring, almost maternal. We'll find solutions, Carmen. That's what we do. But the complications continued to multiply. Carmen's caterer called the next day with concerns about kitchen access during the construction. Her string quartet discovered a double booking that would require significant additional fees to resolve. Even her dress designer contacted her about potential delays in the final fitting schedule. Elena orchestrated each crisis from her office, watching through her window as San Antonio's skyline shimmered in the September heat. She tracked Carmen's growing desperation through social media posts that began as excitement and gradually shifted toward barely concealed panic. Wedding planning is so much more complicated than anyone tells you, Carmen posted on Instagram alongside a photo of herself looking stressed while surrounded by vendor contracts. Why does everything have to be so difficult? #wedding planning, #stressed out. The comments flooded in with sympathy and advice, but Elena noticed the underlying tone shifting. Carmen's usually polished online presence was cracking, revealing the anxiety beneath her influencer persona. The breaking point came during Sunday dinner at their parents' house. Elena arrived precisely on time, bringing David and a bottle of wine, playing the role of supportive family member perfectly. Carmen and Marcus were already there, Carmen's stress evident in the way she picked at her food and checked her phone every few minutes. Mija, you look tired, Isabella observed, studying her younger daughter with maternal concern. Is everything all right with the wedding planning? It's fine, Carmen said quickly, but her voice carried a sharp edge. Just some vendor issues.
Nothing that can't be handled. What kind of issues? Ricardo asked, his contractor's instincts alert to potential problems. Carmen's composure finally cracked. Everything's falling apart, Papa. The photographer canceled, the florist is backing out, the caterer has problems with the venue, and now Elena... She stopped herself, glancing across the table at her sister. Now Elena what? David asked curiously. Nothing, Carmen said. But her eyes remained fixed on Elena's face. It's just coincidental that all these problems started happening after Elena became my wedding planner. The table went silent. Elena could feel everyone's attention shifting between the sisters like spectators at a tennis match. Carmen, Elena said gently, I know this is stressful, but vendor complications happen in every wedding. That's exactly why you need professional management to handle these issues. Vendor complications, Carmen repeated, her voice rising. Is that what you call it when every single person I hired suddenly has problems with my wedding? Carmen, that's not fair, Isabella interjected. Elena is trying to help you. Is she? Carmen's laugh had a bitter edge. Because it's pretty convenient that my wedding is falling apart just weeks after Elena decided she wanted revenge for the Hacienda booking. David's fork paused halfway to his mouth. Revenge? Elena felt the room's energy shift. Everyone suddenly alert to the undercurrent they'd been missing. This was the moment Carmen would either back down or escalate beyond the point of no return. Tell them, Elena, Carmen continued, her voice gaining strength. Tell them how you bought mariposas specifically to control my wedding. Tell them how you're sabotaging everything because you can't stand that I got the venue you wanted. Elena met her sister's gaze with perfect calm. Carmen, you're upset and looking for someone to blame. I understand that, but I'm a professional and I would never compromise a client's event for personal reasons. Bullshit, Carmen snapped, causing Isabella to gasp. Carmen! Ricardo's voice carried the authority of a father who'd had enough. That's enough. Elena is trying to help, and you're being ungrateful. Ungrateful? Carmen's voice cracked. She's destroying my wedding. David was watching Elena with growing concern, something shifting in his expression. He knew her well enough to recognize the signs of her strategic mind at work, and Carmen's accusations were clearly resonating with him in uncomfortable ways. Maybe, David said quietly, we should discuss this privately. But Elena was already standing, her performance of wounded dignity perfect in its execution. No, it's fine. Carmen is stressed, and sometimes people need someone to blame when things don't go perfectly. I understand that. She turned to Carmen, her voice gentle, but carrying an undertone that only her sister could hear. I'm committed to making your wedding beautiful, Carmen. Despite everything that's happened between us, you're still my sister. As Elena gathered her purse, she caught David's expression. Doubt was creeping into his eyes, the first crack in his trust. That concerned her more than Carmen's accusations, but not enough to stop what she'd started. Carmen wanted a war. Elena was going to give her one. But as she drove home through the San Antonio evening, Elena couldn't shake the image of David's face. For the first time since this began, she wondered if her victory might cost her more than she was prepared to lose. That doubt crystallized into certainty when she found David waiting in their apartment, her laptop open on the kitchen counter. Her detailed spreadsheets, vendor contact lists, timeline manipulations, strategic planning documents glowed on the screen like evidence at a crime scene. Elena. His voice was quiet, controlled in the way that meant he was fighting to contain something much larger. We need to talk.
She set down her purse with deliberate calm, buying time to assess the situation. The laptop screen showed her Carmen wedding management folder, complete with vendor vulnerability assessments and sabotage timelines. David had found everything. You went through my computer? I was looking for our engagement photos to send to my mother. David's teacher voice, patient but implacable, cut through her deflection. Instead, I found this. He gestured at the screen. Elena, what the hell is this? Elena moved to close the laptop, but David's hand caught her wrist gently but firmly. Don't. I've already seen it all. The vendor manipulation strategies, the psychological pressure points, the timeline for maximum impact sabotage. His voice cracked slightly on the last words. My God, Elena, you've been systematically destroying your sister's wedding. Carmen stole my venue, so you bought a company to torture her? David stepped back, running his hands through his hair. Elena, listen to yourself. This isn't justice. This is sociopathic. The word hit like a physical blow. Elena felt her carefully constructed justifications begin to crumble under David's horrified stare. You don't understand what it's like. You come from a normal family where people respect each other. Don't. David's voice cut sharp. Don't you dare make this about family dysfunction. This is about you choosing to become someone I don't recognize. Elena searched his face for the man who'd always supported her, who'd listened to her vent about Carmen's favored status and offered gentle comfort. Instead, she found a stranger, evaluating her with the cool assessment of someone discovering they'd been living with a carefully hidden monster. Carmen has had everything handed to her since birth. The hacienda was mine. I've been planning that wedding since I was 12 years old. And now you're 30 and acting like you're still 12. Elena's disappointment was worse than his anger. Elena, I fell in love with someone strong, accomplished, generous. This person, he gestured at the laptop, this person who creates detailed plans to destroy her sister's happiness? I don't know who this is. I'm still me. Are you? David moved to the window, staring out at the city lights. Because the woman I proposed to would never have orchestrated this level of cruelty. She would have been upset about the venue, yes, hurt, absolutely, but she would have found a solution that didn't involve psychological warfare. Elena felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. David was supposed to understand. He'd witnessed years of Carmen's thoughtless behavior, their parents' obvious favoritism. He should see that Elena was finally standing up for herself. "So what are you saying?" David turned back to her, his face filled with a sadness that made Elena's chest tighten. "I'm saying that if this is who you really are, then maybe we need to postpone the wedding." The words landed like ice water. Postpone? I can't marry someone I don't recognize. And right now, looking at what you've done to Carmen.
David shook his head. "I need time to understand if this is a temporary breakdown or if I've been blind to something darker all along." Elena felt panic rising in her throat. "David, please! Carmen started this." "Carmen made a mistake. A thoughtless, selfish mistake that hurt you deeply. I get that." David's voice softened slightly. "But Elena, what you've done in response? This is deliberate, calculated. You've turned your intelligence and resources into weapons specifically designed to cause maximum psychological damage to someone you claim to love." "I don't love her anymore." The admission hung in the air between them like poison gas. David stared at her with something approaching horror. "Then you've already lost more than any venue could possibly be worth." That night, David slept in their guest room. Elena lay awake in their bed, staring at the ceiling and trying to understand how her moment of triumph at the family dinner had somehow become the beginning of her own destruction. Her phone buzzed repeatedly with texts from family members. Her mother pleading for her to call, her father demanding an explanation, even a message from Marcus asking if they could talk privately. Elena ignored them all, but she couldn't ignore the sick feeling growing in her stomach. The next morning brought worse news. Sofia Martinez appeared in Elena's office doorway, her face troubled. "Elena, we need to discuss the Reyes wedding." "What about it?" "I've been getting calls from vendors. They're confused about the mixed messages they've been receiving." Sofia sat down across from Elena's desk, her professional composure intact, but her eyes showing concern. "James from photography mentioned a conversation about venue scheduling that I don't have any record of. Rosa at Artisan Blooms said someone from our office questioned their capacity and reliability." Elena felt the first stirrings of professional panic. She'd been so focused on Carmen that she hadn't considered how her actions might appear to Sofia or the broader vendor community. "I was being proactive about potential issues." "Elena." Sofia's voice carried the gentle firmness of someone who'd built a business on reading people. "I've been in this industry for 15 years. I know the difference between proactive management and deliberate sabotage." The accusation hung between them. Elena found herself facing a choice: continue the deception and risk losing Sofia's respect and partnership, or admit to actions that could destroy her newfound position in the wedding industry. "Carmen and I have personal history." "I gathered that from the family dynamic I witnessed during our meeting." Sofia leaned forward. "Elena, you're brilliant at business strategy, and you've brought resources to Mariposa that I never could have accessed alone. But if you're using this company to wage personal wars, you'll destroy everything we're trying to build." Elena stared at her hands, suddenly seeing her actions through Sofia's eyes. A respected business owner who'd trusted Elena with her life's work, only to discover that trust was being weaponized for family revenge. "I need to know," Sofia continued quietly. "Are you committed to building Mariposa into something ethical and sustainable, or are you here to settle scores with your sister?" Before Elena could answer, her phone rang. Carmen's name flashed on the screen. "Answer it," Sofia said. "But Elena, after this call, we need to decide what kind of business partners we're going to be." Elena accepted the call, putting it on speaker. Carmen's voice filled the office, shaky and desperate.
"Elena, please. I know you're angry about the hacienda, and I know I screwed up.
But Marcus is starting to question everything about our relationship because of the wedding chaos, and Mom won't stop crying, and Carmen's voice broke. I just want my sister back. Can we please talk? Really talk? Not as client and planner, but as sisters. Elena looked up at Sophia, who was watching her with an expression that somehow combined compassion with steely determination. The older woman had built her business on creating joy, and Elena had turned it into a weapon of destruction. For the first time since discovering Carmen's venue booking, Elena had felt the weight of what she'd actually been doing, not fighting for justice or standing up for herself, but systematically dismantling another person's happiness with the precision of a surgeon and the cruelty of someone who'd forgotten that the person she was hurting was supposed to matter to her. "Carmen," Elena said slowly, her voice catching. Yes, we need to talk." But as she ended the call, Elena realized that the damage might already be irreversible. David's trust, Sophia's respect, Carmen's mental health, even her own sense of who she was supposed to be, all of it had become collateral damage in a war she was no longer sure she remembered how to stop. The question now wasn't whether she could win against Carmen. The question was whether there would be anything left of Elena worth saving when the fighting finally ended. As Elena sat in the aftermath of Carmen's tearful phone call, something cold and defiant crystallized in her chest. David's ultimatum, Sophia's moral judgment, Carmen's desperate plea, they all felt like attempts to force Elena back into her old role as the accommodating sister who absorbed everyone else's bad behavior without complaint. "I should go," Sophia said quietly, standing from her chair. "Think about what I said, Elena. This company means everything to me. I won't watch you destroy it for personal revenge." After Sophia left, Elena stared at her phone where Carmen's contact information still glowed on the screen. Her sister wanted to talk, to reconcile, to return to the familiar dynamic where Carmen's mistakes were forgiven and Elena's feelings were minimized for the sake of family peace. Not this time. Elena's fingers moved across her keyboard with renewed purpose. If everyone thought she was the villain, then she'd give them a villain worth fearing. Carmen had stolen her dreams. Elena would make sure Carmen understood exactly what that theft had cost. The Esperanza dress order was almost too easy. Elena had noticed during their planning sessions that Carmen had been indecisive about her final selection, changing her mind twice before settling on a custom creation by Esperanza Morales, San Antonio's most sought-after bridal designer. A single phone call to Esperanza's studio, expressing concerns about payment timeline issues and potential client instability, was all it took to plant the seeds of doubt. "You're saying Carmen Reyes might not be able to honor her financial commitments?" Esperanza's voice carried the wariness of an artist who'd been burned by flaky clients before. "I'm not saying anything definitive," Elena replied carefully, "but there have been irregularities in her vendor payments. Delayed deposits, questioned charges. I just thought you should be aware before investing more time in her custom work." 3 weeks before Carmen's wedding, Esperanza canceled the dress order. Elena felt a savage satisfaction as she imagined Carmen's panic. No designer worth booking could create a custom gown in 3 weeks, especially not during peak wedding season. Carmen would be forced to settle for off-the-rack options or postpone her wedding entirely. The satisfaction lasted exactly until Marcus Chen walked into Elena's office the next afternoon. "We need to talk," he said, closing the door behind him with quiet authority. His usual diplomatic demeanor had been replaced by something harder, more focused. "About what you've been doing to Carmen." Elena looked up from her computer with practiced calm. "Marcus, what a surprise. Carmen's not scheduled for another planning session until—" "Cut the shit, Elena." The profanity sounded strange in Marcus's measured voice. "I know you own this company. I know you've been systematically sabotaging Carmen's wedding, and I know exactly why you're doing it." Elena's fingers paused over her keyboard. Marcus's tech background meant he understood systems, patterns, digital footprints. If he'd been investigating— "Carmen doesn't know yet," Marcus continued, settling into the chair across from her desk. "About your ownership of Mariposa. She still thinks it's just a terrible coincidence that her sister became her wedding planner right when everything started falling apart."
And you are going to tell her?
That depends on you. Marcus leaned forward, his expression serious. I love Carmen, but I'm not blind to her faults. She was thoughtless and selfish about the venue booking. She hurt you, and she should make that right. Elena felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps Marcus understood. Perhaps she had an ally. But what you're doing isn't justice, Elena. It's psychological torture. And if you don't stop, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person you really are. The hope died. Is that a threat? It's a promise. Marcus's voice carried the quiet confidence of someone who'd built a successful business by reading people and situations accurately. Carmen's dress designer called this morning. Apparently, there were questions raised about Carmen's financial reliability that led to her order being canceled. Elena kept her expression neutral. Wedding planning involves managing vendor relationships. Sometimes that means difficult conversations about client stability. 3 weeks before the wedding, for a dress that was already in production? Marcus shook his head. Elena, I've traced the pattern. Every vendor crisis Carmen has experienced can be traced back to communications from this office. You're not just sabotaging her wedding, you're destroying her confidence, her relationships, her mental health. Carmen brought this on herself. Carmen made a mistake. A selfish, thoughtless mistake that she's genuinely sorry for. But you've turned that mistake into a campaign of systematic destruction. Elena stood from her desk, moving to the window that overlooked the Pearl District. Below, couples walked hand in hand through the farmers' market, probably planning their own weddings with excitement and joy instead of the warfare that had consumed Elena's life. What do you want from me, Marcus? Stop. Call off whatever you have planned next. Let Carmen have her wedding, and after that, you two can work out your family issues like adults. Elena turned back to face him. And if I don't? Marcus pulled out his phone, showing Elena a screenshot of social media analytics. Carmen has 500,000 followers who adore her. They've been watching her wedding planning journey, sharing her excitement, offering support during the recent setbacks. He swiped to another screen. One post from her about what you've really been doing, backed up with the evidence I've gathered, and your reputation in this industry, your new business, your relationship with Sophia, all of it disappears overnight. The threat hung between them like a blade. Elena realized that Marcus had just handed her the same choice David and Sophia had offered. Stop the war or lose everything else she claimed to value. You think Carmen would actually do that? Destroy my business publicly? The Carmen I fell in love with? No. But the Carmen you've been systematically breaking down for weeks? Marcus stood, straightening his jacket. I honestly don't know what she's capable of anymore. And that's on you. After Marcus left, Elena sat alone in her office as shadows lengthened across the Pearl District. Her phone showed 17 missed calls from David, 12 from her mother, 6 from Sophia. The weight of their disappointment, their ultimatums, their moral judgment pressed down on her like a physical force. But underneath the pressure was something else, a recognition that she'd crossed so many lines that retreat might be impossible. David had already postponed their engagement.
Sophia was questioning their partnership. Carmen's wedding was in shambles, and Marcus was threatening total exposure. Elena had won the battle by claiming the power to control Carmen's happiness. But the victory felt hollow when she considered what it had cost her. Her computer chimed with a new email from James Sullivan, a name she recognized from the wedding industry but had never worked with directly. Miss Reyes, the message read, I understand you might be experiencing some challenges with your current client roster. Perhaps we could meet to discuss mutually beneficial solutions? I have experience helping businesses navigate difficult transitions. Elena stared at the email, recognizing the careful language of someone who understood her situation and saw opportunity in her crisis. James Sullivan was circling like a shark scenting blood in the water. As the sun set over San Antonio, Elena realized she had a choice to make. She could accept Marcus's ultimatum, call off her campaign, and try to salvage what remained of her other relationships. Or she could double down embrace the villain role everyone seemed determined to cast her in, and finish what she'd started with Carmen regardless of the consequences. The woman Elena had been 6 months ago would have chosen reconciliation, but that woman had also been willing to accept second place, to smile while being overlooked, to accommodate everyone else's comfort at the expense of her own happiness. Elena picked up her phone and dialed James Sullivan's number. The meeting with James took place 3 days later at an upscale restaurant downtown, far from the Pearl District and Mariposa's offices. James was exactly what Elena had expected: polished, opportunistic, with the predatory charm of someone who specialized in profiting from other people's disasters. "Elena, I have to say, I'm impressed by your strategic thinking," James said over expensive wine. "Acquiring Mariposa was brilliant. Unfortunately, it seems like your personal interests have complicated the business dynamics." "You could say that. The wedding industry is built on reputation and relationships. Word travels fast when those relationships become problematic." James leaned forward conspiratorially. "I'm prepared to offer you a way out. I'll purchase Mariposa from you at a fair price, handle the transition professionally, and ensure Sofia Martinez lands on her feet. You walk away clean." Elena studied his face, recognizing the calculation behind his sympathetic expression. "And Carmen's wedding? I'll ensure it proceeds flawlessly. Carmen gets her perfect day, your family conflict stays private, and you get to exit gracefully before things get messier." It should have been the perfect solution. Elena could take the money, end the war, and rebuild her life. But something in James's overly smooth delivery triggered her suspicions. "What's your real angle here, James?" His smile flickered. "I'm simply offering a professional solution to a personal problem." Elena's marketing instincts, dormant during weeks of emotional warfare, suddenly sharpened. "You've been planning this. The vendor complications, the timing. You've been feeding information to people, haven't you?" James's silence was confirmation enough. Elena realized with cold clarity that she'd been manipulated by someone far more experienced in corporate sabotage than she was. While she'd been focused on destroying Carmen, James had been orchestrating Elena's professional destruction. "You son of a bitch. Business is business, Elena. You created the chaos. I'm simply positioned to benefit from it."
Elena left the restaurant with her mind reeling. She'd thought she was playing chess while everyone else played checkers, but James had been playing an entirely different game, one where Elena's obsession with Carmen made her the perfect pawn. The full scope of her miscalculation became clear over the next 48 hours. David's moving truck arrived on Thursday morning while Elena was at the office. She came home to find half their furniture gone and a letter on the kitchen counter. "Elena," it read in David's careful handwriting, "I can't watch you destroy yourself anymore. When you're ready to remember who you used to be, call me. Until then, I need space to figure out if the woman I fell in love with still exists. D." Elena stared at the empty spaces where their shared life had been, the couch where they'd planned their future, the bookshelf where their dreams had lived side by side. The silence felt deafening. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sofia. "Emergency meeting. Now." Elena arrived at Mariposa to find Sofia packing her personal items into boxes, her movements sharp with barely controlled anger. "Sofia, what's happening?" "What's happening is that I've spent the last 2 days fielding calls from vendors who want to know why Mariposa is being investigated for fraudulent business practices." Sofia's voice shook with fury. "Apparently someone has been spreading rumors about our financial stability and ethical standards." Elena felt the room spin. "James Sullivan!" "Among others. Elena, our reputation is destroyed. 3 major vendors have canceled their partnerships. 2 upcoming weddings have been moved to other planners. And Carmen..." Sofia stopped packing, her shoulders sagging. "Carmen posted about her experience on social media last night." Elena's blood turned to ice. "What did she say?" Sofia handed Elena her phone. Carmen's Instagram post had already garnered thousands of comments and shares. The video showed Carmen in their childhood bedroom, tears streaming down her face, holding up her phone to display a series of screenshots.
I want to share something with you all because I believe in honesty." Carmen's voice was raw with emotion. "My wedding has been falling apart for weeks. Vendors canceling, deposits lost, my dress order canceled 3 weeks before my wedding day. I thought it was just bad luck until my fiancé started investigating." The camera panned to show Marcus sitting beside Carmen, his expression grim. "We discovered that my own sister bought my wedding planning company specifically to sabotage my wedding. Screenshots of her planning documents, vendor manipulation strategies, psychological pressure campaigns, all designed to destroy what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life." Elena watched in horror as Carmen displayed image after image of Elena's planning documents, her strategic notes, her cold calculation of Carmen's emotional vulnerabilities. "I don't understand how someone I love could hate me this much." Carmen continued, her voice breaking. "But I wanted you all to know the truth about what's been happening. Sometimes the people closest to you are capable of things you never imagined." The video had been viewed over 200,000 times. The comments ranged from shock to outrage to sympathy for Carmen. Elena's name was being dragged through the digital mud by thousands of strangers who saw her as a monster attacking her innocent sister. "It gets worse," Sophia said quietly. "2 of my other clients saw the video. They're demanding to know if their weddings are safe with Mariposa." "Elena, you haven't just destroyed Carmen's wedding, you've destroyed everything I've spent 15 years building." Before Elena could respond, her phone rang. Her mother's name flashed on the screen. "Mija, thank God. You need to come to the hospital immediately." "Hospital? What happened?" "Your father. He had a heart attack this morning. He saw Carmen's video and—" "Elena, we need you here. Both of you."
The drive to the hospital passed in a blur of panic and self-recrimination. Elena found her family in the cardiac care waiting room. Carmen curled in Marcus's arms, still crying. Isabella pacing frantically. Relatives Elena hadn't seen in months, all staring at her with expressions ranging from confusion to outright hostility. "How is he?" Elena asked, her voice barely audible. "Stable," Isabella replied, without looking at her. "But, Elena, the stress of watching his daughters destroy each other, the doctor said it was a contributing factor." Elena sank into a plastic chair, staring at the sterile hospital floor. Her father, quiet, gentle Ricardo who'd built their family business with his hands and raised his daughters to believe in the power of hard work and loyalty, was lying in a hospital bed because his children had forgotten how to love each other. Carmen looked up from Marcus's shoulder, her eyes red and swollen. "Are you happy now?" "Carmen, is this what you wanted? Dad in the hospital? Our family destroyed? Your fiancé gone? My career in ruins? Sophia's business ruined?" Carmen's voice rose with each word. "What was it all for, Elena? A venue? A fucking building?" The waiting room had gone silent. Family members, nurses, other patients' relatives, everyone was staring at the sisters whose private war had spilled into public tragedy. Elena opened her mouth to respond, to defend herself, to explain that Carmen had started this, but looking at her sister's devastated face, at her mother's tears, at the empty chair where David should have been offering support, Elena realized that explanations didn't matter anymore. She had won. Carmen's wedding was destroyed, her confidence shattered, her public image damaged. Elena had proven that she could fight back, that she wouldn't be overlooked or dismissed. The victory tasted like ashes. "I need to see him," Elena whispered. "He's sleeping," Isabella replied. "The medication. He needs rest." Elena nodded and walked away from her family, down sterile hospital corridors that smelled of disinfectant and broken dreams. She found herself in the hospital chapel, sitting in an empty pew, surrounded by the prayers of strangers seeking miracles she wasn't sure she deserved. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. "I'm resigning from Mariposa, effective immediately. James Sullivan has offered to buy out my remaining interest. I suggest you take whatever deal he's offering and walk away. Some things can't be fixed, Elena. Some damage is permanent." Elena stared at the message until the words blurred. She had started this war to reclaim what Carmen had stolen from her. Instead, she had lost everything. David, Sophia, her family's respect, even her own sense of who she was supposed to be. And for what?
A venue that would now host neither sister's wedding since both their relationships lay in ruins? Alina closed her eyes and tried to remember the woman she'd been before the phone call that started this nightmare. But that woman felt like a stranger now, someone naive enough to believe that love and forgiveness were stronger than pride and revenge. The question now wasn't whether Alina could find her way back to that person. The question was whether anyone would be willing to help her try. Elena sat in the hospital chapel until the overhead lights dimmed for evening hours, surrounded by the whispered prayers of other desperate souls. When she finally returned to the cardiac unit, she found the waiting room nearly empty. Just Carmen curled in the same plastic chair, staring at nothing while Marcus rubbed her shoulders with mechanical comfort. "He's awake," Carmen said without looking up. "Mom's with him now. Visiting hours end in 20 minutes. Elena nodded, settling into a chair 3 seats away. The distance felt appropriate, close enough to share the vigil, far enough to acknowledge the chasm between them. "The doctor said he'll be okay," Carmen continued, her voice hollow. "No permanent damage, just stress and exhaustion." She finally looked at Elena, her eyes empty of the fire that had burned between them for weeks. Stress from watching his daughters tear each other apart.
Carmen, I deleted the video. Carmen's interruption was quiet, matter of fact. After Marcus told me Dad was in the hospital, I deleted it and posted an apology. Said I was going through a difficult time and shouldn't have made our family problems public. Elena stared at her sister, searching for the trap, the manipulation, the hidden agenda. But Carmen's posture spoke only of exhaustion and defeat. Why? Because I realized I'd become just like you. Carmen's laugh was bitter. Using my platform as a weapon. Destroying your reputation the same way you destroyed my wedding. We're quite the pair, aren't we? The honesty cut deeper than any accusation. Elena felt something crack in her chest. Not the sharp break of anger or betrayal, but the slow, grinding fracture of recognition. I never meant for Dad to get hurt. Neither did I. Carmen shifted in her chair, finally facing Elena directly. But we did it anyway, because hurting each other felt more important than protecting the people who love us. They sat in silence as the cardiac unit settled into evening rhythms. Nurses padded past in soft shoes, families whispered their goodbyes. Machines beeped steadily in rooms where people fought battles more important than sibling rivalry. "Elena," Carmen said slowly, "why do you hate me so much?" The question hung between them like a bridge. One Elena could cross toward honesty or burn with another defensive lie. She thought about the chapel, about the emptiness in her apartment, about David's letter and Sophia's resignation, and her father's pale face when the paramedics wheeled him away. "I don't hate you," Elena said finally. "I hate what you represent." "What do I represent?" Elena closed her eyes, reaching for words that had lived in her shadow for decades. "Everything I've never been able to be. Effortless, loved, chosen." Carmen was quiet for so long that Elena opened her eyes, expecting to find her sister's attention elsewhere. Instead, Carmen was staring at her with something approaching wonder. "You think I'm effortless? Carmen, you breathe and people smile. You walk into a room and suddenly everyone's day is brighter. You ask for things and people fall over themselves to give them to you." Elena's voice carried 28 years of accumulated observation. Even when you mess up, you're forgiven. Even when you hurt people, you're excused. Even when you steal someone's dreams, Mom and Dad find ways to make it your victim's fault. "Elena," Carmen's voice was strange, choked. "Do you have any idea how exhausting it is to be everyone's favorite?" Elena blinked. "Exhausting? Do you know what it's like to never be allowed to fail? To have every mistake treated like a tragic accident instead of a consequence? To have people excuse your worst behavior because they need you to stay perfect?" Carmen's composure finally cracked. "I booked the hacienda without thinking, because I've never had to think, because someone else always cleans up my messes, always finds solutions, always makes everything okay." "You're complaining about being loved too much?" I'm saying I've never learned how to be human because everyone treats me like a doll they need to protect. Carmen wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Elena, you think I'm chosen? I'm not chosen. I'm performed. I'm mom and dad's proof that they're good parents. Your evidence that life isn't fair. Marcus's trophy girlfriend who looks good in his startup world.
When have I ever been loved for who I actually am instead of what I represent to other people? Elena felt her worldview tilting. But you get everything. I get everything handed to me, which means I've never earned anything. Do you know what that does to a person? To never know if you deserve what you have? Carmen's voice broke. You think I stole your venue out of malice? I stole it out of panic because Marcus proposed and everyone expected me to be thrilled, and I was terrified that if I actually planned a wedding myself, I'd prove I'm as useless as I sometimes feel. The admission hung between them like a confession. Elena stared at her sister, really looked at her, and for the first time saw past the glossy exterior to something raw and vulnerable underneath. You were scared, terrified of planning something important on my own, of disappointing Marcus, of proving that I'm just a pretty face with good lighting. Carmen's laugh was hollow. And when I called Mom about the hacienda and she said it would be perfect without mentioning you'd already booked it, I jumped at the easy solution because easy solutions are all I know how to navigate. Elena processed this slowly, years of resentment reorganizing around new information. You really didn't know I'd reserved the date? Elena, I didn't even know you wanted to get married at the hacienda until you told me on the phone. Carmen's eyes filled with fresh tears. I saw your vision boards, but I thought they were just pretty pictures. I never realized they represented actual plans, actual dreams. Because I've never planned anything that mattered, so I don't recognize planning when I see it. But you always seemed so confident. I'm confident about taking selfies and picking restaurants. I've never been confident about anything real. Carmen wiped her nose with a tissue from her purse. And when you called that day, so angry and hurt, I finally understood what I'd actually done. But instead of admitting I'd screwed up, I got defensive, because that's what I do when I'm scared. Elena felt something fundamental shifting in her understanding of their dynamic. All these years, I thought you knew. I thought you knew Mom and Dad favored you, and you just enjoyed it. How could I enjoy something that made my sister hate me? The simple question demolished what remained of Elena's defensive walls. She saw their childhood through Carmen's eyes, the pressure to be perfect, the isolation of being treasured but not known, the loneliness of relationships built on projection rather than authentic connection. I don't hate you, Elena said quietly. I hate feeling invisible next to you. And I hate feeling fake next to your authenticity. They stared at each other across the plastic chairs, 28 and 25 years old, but feeling like the children they'd been when this pattern first took root. Elena realized that while she'd been fighting for recognition, Carmen had been drowning in attention that felt more like performance expectations than love. We're both idiots, Elena said finally. Spectacular idiots. A nurse appeared in the doorway. Ladies, visiting hours are ending, but you're welcome to stay in the family lounge overnight if you'd like. Elena looked at Carmen, seeing her sister clearly for perhaps the first time in their lives. Would you want company tonight, in case he needs anything? Carmen's smile was small but genuine. I'd like that. I'd like that a lot.
As they gathered their things to move to the family lounge, Elena realized they'd just taken the first tentative step toward becoming something they'd never been before. Actual sisters instead of competing symbols in their parents' dysfunctional family drama. It wasn't forgiveness yet, and it certainly wasn't solution. But it was a beginning. The family lounge at 2 a.m. was a liminal space, too bright for sleep, too quiet for normal conversation, filled with vending machine coffee and the weight of crisis. Elena and Carmen had claimed opposite ends of a worn couch, laptops open, working in companionable silence for the first time in their adult lives. Elena was crafting emails to every vendor she'd manipulated, while Carmen scrolled through her social media analytics, watching the fallout from her deleted video continue to ripple through her follower base. Esperanza's dress studio called, Carmen said without looking up from her phone. They saw my video before I deleted it. They want to reinstate my dress order. Elena's fingers paused over her keyboard. That's good, is it? Carmen's voice was thoughtful. I mean, she's only offering because she feels sorry for me, because I look like a victim now instead of a bridezilla. Elena studied her sister's profile, noting the new lines of exhaustion around her eyes. Do you want the dress back? I don't know what I want anymore. Carmen closed her laptop. 3 weeks ago, I had a Pinterest-perfect wedding planned that was supposed to get 1 million likes and maybe land me a sponsored partnership with some bridal magazine. Now, she gestured vaguely at the hospital around them. Now, I'm not even sure I remember why I wanted to get married in September in the first place. Elena calls her own laptop, giving Carmen her full attention. Because you love Marcus. Do I? Or do I love the way loving Marcus makes me look? Carmen's honesty was brutal. Elena, I don't think I've ever made a decision based on what I actually wanted instead of what looked right for my image. Including the hacienda? Carmen nodded slowly. Especially the hacienda. I saw other influencers posting about venue shopping, and I panicked because I didn't have content that could compete. So I called Mom and booked the first place that sounded impressive enough. She looked at Elena directly. I never even asked myself if I wanted to get married there. I just knew it would photograph well. Elena felt something shift in her understanding of Carmen's motivations. What do you actually want, Carmen? If social media didn't exist, if Mom and Dad's opinions didn't matter, if you could plan a wedding based purely on what would make you happy, what would that look like? Carmen was quiet for so long that Elena wondered if she'd pushed too hard. When her sister finally spoke, her voice was small and uncertain. I think I'd want something small, just family and close friends. Maybe in Mom's garden with lights strung through the trees and Dad grilling barbacoa for everyone. Carmen's smile was wistful. Marcus's family is so close-knit and warm. When I visit them in Seattle, we spend evenings playing board games and talking about books instead of taking photos of our food. I love that. That sounds beautiful. It sounds like a disaster for my personal brand. Carmen laughed, but it wasn't bitter anymore. 500,000 followers expect a fairy tale wedding that they can live vicariously through. A backyard barbecue doesn't exactly scream aspirational lifestyle content.
Elena considered this, her marketing brain engaging with a different kind of problem than she'd been solving for weeks. What if authentic happiness was your brand, instead of performative perfection? Is that even possible in the influencer world? I don't know, but maybe that's the wrong question. Elena shifted on the couch to face Carmen more directly. Maybe the question is whether you want to keep living a life designed for other people's consumption or start building something that's actually yours. They talked until sunrise, their conversation meandering through years of miscommunication and mutual misunderstanding. Elena shared her memories of feeling invisible next to Carmen's shine, while Carmen revealed her terror of never measuring up to the perfection everyone expected from her. When the morning shift nurses arrived, both sisters looked exhausted, but somehow lighter. They visited their father together, finding him awake and alert, his relief at seeing them talking civilly evident despite his weakened state. "Mijas," Ricardo said, his voice hoarse but warm. "I was so worried." "We're okay, Papa," Elena said, squeezing his hand. "We're going to be okay." After consulting with doctors and ensuring Ricardo's continued recovery, the sisters made their first joint decision. They were going to fix the damage they'd caused, starting with the wedding that was supposed to happen in 2 weeks. Their first stop was Mariposa's offices.
where they found Sophia packing the last of her personal items. She looked up as they entered, her expression wary. Elena. Carmen. Sophia's voice was carefully neutral. I didn't expect to see you together. Sophia, we need to talk to you, Elena began, but Carmen stepped forward. We need to apologize, Carmen said simply. Elena told me what you've built here, how much this business means to you. I'm sorry my family drama destroyed something you loved. Sophia studied both sisters, clearly trying to assess whether this was another manipulation or genuine remorse. Elena pulled out a folder of documents. I've drafted a proposal. I want to sell my interest in Mariposa back to you for exactly what I paid, with a personal loan structure that won't put you in financial jeopardy. No interest, payments structured around your business capacity. Why? Because you're right. This company should be about creating joy, not settling scores. Elena's voice was steady. And because Carmen and I want to work together to plan a wedding that actually reflects who she is, instead of who she thinks she should be. Sophia looked between the sisters, her expression softening slightly. And James Sullivan? James Sullivan can go to hell, Carmen said firmly, surprising both older women with her vehemence. Elena, tell her about the manipulation. Elena explained James's role in escalating the vendor complications, his opportunistic approach to acquiring Mariposa during the chaos. Sophia listened with growing anger. That bastard! I should have known his interest was too convenient. Help us, Elena said quietly. Not because you owe us anything, but because you're the best wedding planner in San Antonio, and Carmen deserves to have her real wedding, not the performance she thought she wanted. Sophia was quiet for a long moment, studying the sisters who'd gone from enemies to allies in the span of a single night. I'll consider your proposal, she said finally, but Elena, if you ever use my business for personal vendettas again, you'll destroy me professionally and personally, and I'll deserve every bit of it. I know. Carmen stepped forward. Sophia, I want to plan a completely different wedding, something real instead of something Instagram perfect. Will you help us?
Sophia looked at Carmen's earnest expression, then at Elena's tentative hope, and Elena saw the exact moment when the wedding planner's passion for her craft overcame her wariness about their family drama. Tell me about this real wedding, Sophia said, settling back into her chair. What does authentic happiness look like when it's not performed for an audience? As Carmen began describing her vision of fairy lights and family barbecue, Elena felt something she hadn't experienced in months. The possibility that love could be stronger than pride, that building something together could be more satisfying than tearing each other apart. They had 2 weeks to salvage not just a wedding, but their entire relationship with each other and the people they'd hurt. It wouldn't be easy, and it might not be enough. But for the first time since this war began, Elena believed it might be possible. 2 weeks later, Elena stood in the gardens of the Hacienda de los Fantos, watching the morning sun cast golden light through the ancient oak trees. The venue looked exactly as she dreamed it would for her own wedding. Strings of warm lights wound through branches, white roses climbing stone archways, the chapel doors thrown open to reveal hand-carved pews where 3 generations of her family had celebrated life's most sacred moments. Today, it would host Carmen's wedding. Elena's wedding would take place next month at the Pearl Farmers Market Pavilion, a choice that had surprised everyone but felt authentically hers. Urban, unconventional, surrounded by the energy of the community she'd built her career in. Elena? Carmen appeared beside her, radiant in a simple gown that Sophia had helped her select. Elegant but not ostentatious, beautiful but not performative. Are you sure about this? Really sure? Elena turned to face her sister, seeing the genuine concern in Carmen's eyes. The past 2 weeks had been a whirlwind of wedding planning, family healing, and careful reconstruction of relationships that had seemed irreparably damaged. They'd worked side by side with Sophia to create something that honored Carmen's authentic vision rather than her Instagram persona. I'm sure, Elena said simply, this place belongs to you today. Carmen's eyes filled with tears. Elena, I can't accept this. Not after everything I put you through. Not after I stole your dream. You didn't steal my dream, Carmen.
You helped me realize my dream was never about a venue. Elena reached for her sister's hands. My dream was about being surrounded by people who choose to love me for who I am, not who they need me to be. And that can happen anywhere. Before Carmen could respond, their mother appeared in the garden doorway, her face glowing with the particular joy that comes from seeing one's children finally understand each other. Mijas, Father Miguel is ready for the ceremony rehearsal. Carmen, your young man is asking about the processional order. And Elena, David is here. Elena's heart skipped. She hadn't seen David since he'd moved out 3 weeks ago, though they'd exchanged careful texts as Elena worked to rebuild what she'd destroyed. His presence at Carmen's wedding felt like a tentative olive branch, but Elena wasn't sure what it meant for their own future. She found him in the chapel, adjusting one of the floral arrangements with the precision that had first attracted her to his gentle perfectionism. David. He turned, and Elena saw something in his face that made her breath catch. Not the coldness she'd expected, but a cautious warmth that suggested he'd been watching her transformation from a distance. Elena, you look... He paused, studying her face. You look like yourself again. I'm trying to be. Elena moved closer, noting that he didn't step away. David, I know I destroyed everything between us. I know trust isn't something you can just rebuild with apologies and good intentions. No, he agreed, but it's something you can rebuild with consistent actions over time. His voice softened. Elena, I've been watching what you've done these past 2 weeks, the way you've worked to repair relationships, the way you've put Carmen's happiness ahead of your own need to be right. That's the woman I fell in love with. Elena felt tears threatening. Does that mean... It means I'd like to try again. Slowly. Carefully. With the understanding that we both have work to do.
David reached into his jacket pocket, pulling out the engagement ring Elena had returned to him weeks ago. But if you're willing to rebuild this relationship on honesty instead of performance, then yes, I'd like to try. Elena stared at the ring, overwhelmed by the magnitude of grace being offered to her. David, neither of us deserves perfect love, Elena, but maybe we can earn authentic love by choosing each other every day, even when it's difficult. He held out the ring. What do you say? Elena slipped the ring back onto her finger, feeling the weight of commitment and possibility. I say we take it one day at a time. The wedding that followed was everything Carmen had never known she wanted. Marcus's family had flown in from Seattle, bringing warmth and laughter that filled the hacienda with genuine joy rather than performed perfection. Carmen's social media remained deliberately silent. No live streaming, no posed photos, just the presence of a woman choosing authentic happiness over digital validation. Elena stood beside her sister as maid of honor, watching Carmen's face as she exchanged vows with Marcus. The words they spoke were their own, crafted during long conversations about building a marriage based on truth rather than appearances. When Father Miguel pronounced them husband and wife, the celebration that erupted felt earned rather than expected. Sophia had outdone herself, orchestrating a reception that felt more like a family reunion than a staged event. Elena's father, still recovering but determined to dance with both his daughters, held court at a table surrounded by relatives who seemed amazed to witness the sisters' transformation from combatants to allies. As the evening wound down, Elena found herself standing with Carmen on the terrace where they'd fought so bitterly just months before. Any regrets? Elena asked, watching the last guests dance under the string lights. Only that it took us 28 years to have an honest conversation, Carmen replied. Elena, I want you to know, what you did today, giving me this venue, letting me have the wedding here, that's the most generous thing anyone has ever done for me. It's the least I could do after trying to destroy your happiness. No, Carmen said firmly. What you did before came from pain. What you did today came from love. There's a difference. Elena felt the truth of that distinction settle in her chest. Love and pain could coexist, but they didn't have to destroy each other. Sometimes the most loving thing was learning when to fight and when to surrender. As the sisters embraced under the stars, Elena realized that she'd finally found what she'd been searching for all along. Not victory over Carmen, but partnership with her. Not recognition of her superiority, but acceptance of their equality. Not her sister's defeat, but their mutual triumph over the patterns that had kept them apart. 6 weeks later, Elena and David would exchange their own vows at the Pearl Farmers Market, surrounded by vendors who'd become friends and community members who celebrated love in all its authentic forms. Carmen would serve as Elena's maid of honor, and their parents would beam with pride at daughters who'd finally learned that love shared was love multiplied. But tonight, standing in the garden where their war had begun, the sisters simply held each other and marveled at how much more beautiful the world looked when they chose to see it together. The venue wars were over. Love had won. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.